Okay, this video we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about, these are all going to do with fractions, talk about common denominator, and while we're talking about that, we're going to talk about the least common denominator. And one of the reasons you want to find the least common denominator so you don't have to reduce your fractions, but if you do reduce your fractions or run into fractions that need to be reduced, we're going to talk about how to do that too. So, if you're confused about what denominators are, it's in Math Words video. Should be a link in the description at some point when I get the video up and ready. So, if we're looking at a fraction, like 1/2, numerator and denominator. Now, if we want to add or subtract that fraction with another fraction, so you want to add it with 1/3, can't really do that. You have to have these two bottom numbers, the denominators, the same. That's what I mean by finding a common denominator. Now, there are a couple ways of going about this. To just find the denominator, you can multiply the two together. What you can do is just come here and say, well, 2 times 3 and 3 times 2. And you wind up with 1/6 plus 1/6. And then you can come across and add as usual 2/6. Now, that is a reducible fraction because they share a common factor. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video about how we went down to 1/3. But the thing is, now 6 happens to also be the lowest common denominator here. But like I said, the way that we got there was we multiplied the denominators by each other. And that will always give you a common denominator. But it may give you a way big common denominator that winds up making you reduce a fraction later. Even though in this case the LCD also, lowest common denominator, also causes you to have to reduce your fraction. So what we're going to do here is let's look at how to find an LCD. And the can be kind of a time consuming, a little bit of work. That's why sometimes it's easier just to multiply them together and reduce later. But let's start looking at multiples. And what I mean by multiples is when we multiply 2 by stuff, what do we get? Like 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 5 is 10. Well, let's look at 3. 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times 5 is 15. Now, I recommend just running out first 5 multiples. Sometimes you'll find a link in between them. So if we look, though, we've got a 6 here and a 6 here. So we found our least common denominator by finding the multiple that they share furthest to the left. Again, this method can be pretty time consuming if it doesn't happen in the first 5 multiples. So in that case, if you're starting to really drag out and not finding anything, I'd recommend go ahead and just multiplying your two denominators together. So this problem was kind of set up to intentionally come out nice and easy with a nice low number so we didn't have to go through too many multiples. Now, when you come out with a fraction, like we were talking about, we came out with 2/6. That is a reducible fraction. Now, what makes it a reducible fraction? They have a common factor, and again, math word, factor. And basically what a factor is the numbers that you can multiply together to make this number. So if we look at 2, we're going to break this one down a little bit. And in fact, let me rewrite this so everything looks a little neater. We're going to break this one down a little bit. 2 here. Make our fraction 2/6. So as we're going through this, when we're talking about the 2, we're going to be writing in blue and the 6 in orange. If it shows up as orange on the camera. Anyway, let's look at how you can break 2 down. And 2 is pretty simple. You can multiply 2 times 2, 2 times 1. And that's about the only way to get 2. 6 is a little more complicated because you can multiply 6 times 1. Always start out with anything times 1 is itself. So you know that's always going to be a factor. But you can also multiply 3 times 2. Now, Don't forget these are always multiplied. There's no addition here. You can't say, well, 5 plus 1 is 6. That's not a factor. Factors only deal with multiplication. Okay, so to see that they have a common factor, we're going to look and we see we got 2 right here and a 2 right here. So now we know we have this common factor. What we do, I'm going to come over here and reduce my fraction. To reduce the fraction, we look over here and we say, what in this pairing with our common factor? Well, our common factor is 2, and that pairing for our 2 is a 1. So we put a 1, it really is a 1, I promise. Put a 1 right there. When we look at our 6, okay, here's our 2, here's our common factor. What is paired with it? 3. So we put what's paired with it right there. And that is how you reduce a fraction. It works with a couple of tricks in there, things that you'll see, like multiples of 2. Most people understand multiples of 2 because we count by 2s all the time. Any even number, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, on and on and on and on, are always going to be multiples of 2. They'll always have a 2 common factor in there with them. If you've got 2 on top and any even number on the bottom, you can always reduce that fraction. Just like if you have a number ending in 5 or 0 and a 5 on the top, or on the bottom, you can always reduce that fraction because any number, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, all multiples of 5, meaning 5 is one of their factors. Now, there are also some times when you look and you know you're not going to have one, like if you should have, say, a 5 on top and an even number on bottom. Most likely, that's not going to factor. Unless your even number ends in a 0. But anything that's like a 2, 4, 6, 8 type even number is not going to have 5 as one of its factors. Now, if you have any questions about the terminology, like I said, there'll be a video going up that should have a link in the description about terminology and math words. Or if you have any other questions about reducing fractions or common denominators, throw them in the comments.